Cannes 2009. I would now like to introduce the President of the jury, David Dragan.
Good morning, welcome. I hope all of you stayed out till 5 o'clock in the morning, so it's all fair. Okay. They've all got the list, do they? Well, I'll just talk a little bit, and then I'll open it up to you guys. So please ask the whole jury questions, and we'll try and answer them as accurately as possible. I think, having been lucky enough to be on many juries in my career, I think this was actually probably the most enjoyable jury I've sat on, and probably the most vocal and transparent jury. I think that was the advantage of being a small, intimate jury, which was, and I think the best work absolutely rose to the top, and when it came to the hard decisions, they actually weren't that hard. I think that the best work was almost to a T unanimous. I think, obviously, when you look at the winners, I imagine you will have some questions. But I think that as part of the jury, even when we got down to the short list of, I think it was 22 pieces, I thought it was a very strong short list. I thought it actually was very optimistic for our industry. I think everyone always is talking about what's happening in our industry, and I think it made me feel pride in what we're doing, and it was a good cross-section from big, historic political campaigns to massive brands, global brands, to feisty, small brands, and a cross-section of many countries. I think also one of the things that we had to do as a jury is we had to wade through over 400 5-minute videos. I think next year Terry should actually create something where your entry, you pay by the second, so that way all the entries can be small. But it was fantastic. It was a lot of healthy discussion. We had so much discussion that actually, when it came to the voting, I think it was a lot easier. It wasn't really disagreement. Part of the jury's responsibility was to actually separate between what we thought what we thought it fell into, whether we thought it fell into an integrated piece or whether it fell into a titanium piece. And I think we felt that the Grand Prix winner, the Obama campaign, it had a valid case for being in both categories. Whatever we could spend half an hour talking about why we thought it was a great example of an integrated, and then you could put an argument together and talk about why we thought it was a huge, bold step and big idea, and why it should win the titanium. And obviously there's lots of chat about, everybody wants people to define what titanium is, and it's a category that we think is evolving every year, and we hope the jury takes it on further next year. But we're proud of the winners. We think the winners demonstrate that our industry is moving forward. We think, titanium, as we defined it, is ideas and I think Susan said it best. She said ideas that create a movement, and that movement can be for change, or it can be to sacrifice your friends on Facebook, but something that creates a movement where you want to participate, an idea that's bigger than just a disposable idea. And integrated was, we were trying to celebrate those great ideas that were made better by all the multiple touch points, that were fantastic. They just embraced all the different mediums, but it made one strong campaign that was actually made better by everything. But it was a really good jury, and we are proud of our choices. So I don't know if anybody wants to ask.
I think you've just answered everything.
All right. Thanks. So we're done. See you later. Does anyone have any questions?
Was there any other piece of work that was actually a contender or to challenge Obama for either of these categories?
To be honest, I don't think there was, and that's not to take anything away from the other winners, because just to get a bronze, silver, or gold, or even just to get a titanium is obviously fantastic. But I don't think there was. It wasn't, and we would have been open to any discussion if someone, but none of us were put forward. It seemed to just naturally. That's what I meant. We had spent so much time talking that when it actually came to the crescendo, it sort of found itself really.
I would say it was like a world award. I mean, Obama was a movement, and it wasn't an American movement, it was a world movement, and I think we all felt that.
And not to take anything away from the other 3 titanium winners, because they're all equal, and there's no bronze, silver, they're all titanium. But they're all movements, and we still have things like records to sell out there, and setting a bar that for the jury next year that you have to elect the president. You know, we need to have other things to measure our successes with too.
Also, this was discussed about whether it's a public service campaign, and traditionally, public service campaign doesn't qualify for a Grand Prix. But we all decided that Obama is a brand. It's a brand campaign, and it's a campaign which, for the first time, consumer co-created a brand together with the brand owner. So it was something which advertising industry cannot ignore, and it's purely a brand campaign, and that's the reason it was awarded the Grand Prix.
I think, you know, we've all seen political campaigns in our lives in all our countries, and you know, it's probably something we've always sniggered about because we've thought it's always been formulaic, and I don't think political advertising will ever be the same again. And isn't that sort of what the Titanium is meant to do? It's meant to make things better and make everyone look at what they do slightly different, and I think it will change the way that people do political advertising.
I think the other thing that it does is it's very inspiring, and I think that's a really important thing in our business is when you can inspire people, that's the best thing you can do. So that's always should be our goal.
And also, I think that when you talk about movement, this campaign as human branding is about a movement that makes history, and that's even bigger. Not like, wow, advertising is much more than we can think that we can have. In this case, it's a tremendous case about making history.
Just, I guess the not just political campaigning will be changed forever, but I think all campaigning is a record of the year, is a kind of symbol of a lot of things that have changed over the last 10, 15 years. I think the Obama campaign kind of sums up in a fantastic way just how much the whole industry's changed, how much integrated work, digital work, all these different things have all got to kind of come together and be used, and it's something I think everyone can learn from. It's important to kind of make that statement, I think.
I think it's worth noting that we were, you know, as a jury we discussed, you know, we did separate the man from the campaign. You know, so this wasn't a vote for the man, okay? You know, this was a rational conversation we had. This wasn't an emotional conversation. You know, we were able to separate the man from the thinking, and you know, I think it's important to note that.
Although we are going to get another copy of the award and send it to George Bush.
I wanted to give him an honorary vote. He helped a lot.
Hi, just out of interest, obviously, as you guys have been talking, the Obama campaign featured a sort of cast of thousands with Obama himself as the kind of creative director. Just as the person who's entered the campaign, it says Obama for America in Washington, who put the campaign in? There were tons of people working on it. So who's the award going to?
And I can't remember the exact name, but it was a political activist company. I think it was GMB&B in Washington, and the client was David Plouffe. So we think that gives it the required level of legitimacy.
And as far as we are concerned as a jury, we are not concerned who entered it. We are awarding ideas. I mean, whom is it going to? Even if it goes to Obama as a creative director, we don't mind that.
It's just out of interest. I'm sure Barack Obama is not entering it himself, so I just wanted to know where that was coming
Even
from.
if he would have, we would have loved to have him here.
He's going to show up today and pick it up.
We are hoping that in the Oval Office, the lion will be behind him.
But, you know, as a creative director, Obama, you know, his strike rate is pretty good now. That's his first campaign as well. So, you know, he did pretty good.
It doesn't use the tools that they
Creative.
started. So that's the award, is this understanding this new medium.
Yeah.
Let's talk in the World 1-3 Grand Prix. Was there a lot of discussion about whether to give it the titanium, and what was your decision in the end, why you didn't give it to it?
Well, if you look at what Susan had said earlier also in the jury room and what Dave just said, in titanium we were looking at something which creates a movement. Best job in the world is definitely a great idea, but it's not something about titanium. What we were looking for and how we we define titanium for ourselves as something which creates a movement, which expands the boundaries, and it involves so many people that it sort of cascades down into the society and becomes part of a culture, or creates a subculture altogether. So we felt those criteria, other entries scored much higher than this one. Nobody is denying that this idea is a great idea, and that's the reason it has won in many other categories. But for this particular category, we felt others scored much higher in the parameters we defined.
I don't think it was a statement that it wasn't a great piece. I mean, I think everybody agrees it's a wonderful piece. I just think when it came to voting, people unanimously voted others higher. Really, and I think this was a well-deserved winner of the other promos and PR and all that sort of stuff. But the jury voted unanimously.
Juries can be really partisan at times, but at least in our case, people were incredibly generous with other people's work. So that, like, if there were deficiencies here or there, then there were plenty of people in the room that were quite willing to be supportive and generous with their, anti-copy campaign. So I don't know. They did really well, but it's some great company.
Teresa Howard with USA Today. I guess, David, this would be for you or anyone else who wants to take it. 2 questions, just a little logistical thing with the listing. So this Titanium Grand Prix. The silvers, is that for titanium or integrated?
All the silvers and bronzes and golds are integrated.
Okay, great, thank you. And then just looking at the Obama campaign and what you guys are talking about in terms of movement, and looking at Cannes in terms of creativity, I mean, it seems more a lot about execution and being novel, I think, for maybe a political campaign. Can you talk about it a little bit more in the context of creativity, or did you see it, it is a brand, you had some great logos, you did, so can you just talk a little bit more about it in terms of the creative context?
Well, I think that, we weren't drilling down to, every single element of the campaign, because there was literally hundreds of thousands, but it was the thinking in the beginning and how they employed that strategy. That was a very big idea. That they resisted many cliches. Sometimes they embraced some of the cliches, but they also, as someone mentioned before, their idea was, the way they tackled new media was second to none. I think the way they turned it from being a one-dimensional sort of campaign that's coming out from them to everybody, and turned it into something that the whole country could actually contribute to, add to, and make it part of their campaign. We thought that was a fantastic idea. Do you know what I mean? So we didn't judge it by every single element of the campaign, but we judged it by how all the elements came together to create this huge momentum that kept on growing and growing and growing, and there was consistency throughout every element. And it was, I'm sure, which is why most political advertising is one and the same. They resisted actually doing things the way it had been done before. So there was an active time where we imagined, when they decided that they were going to do things their way differently, that was sincere for their candidates, sincere for the time. And I think the thinking in that is what we were rewarding.
I think the creativity comes in the way, like all great advertising is designed to obliterate the competition. And I think in this case, that's what happened through that creativity, because competition didn't use the same communication skills. And frankly, that's a real checkbox.
Yeah, and if you look at the brand, if it was not a person, if it was a brand, can you imagine a brand which is launched, whose people have embraced so openly that its success also depends on how people want to own this brand today. They want this brand to be successful. It's a new brand launch. You've now not seen a brand like this, which is co-owned and co-created by people. It's something which advertising industry couldn't have ignored at all.
I would say, would I like the commercials to be better? You bet. Creatively, yes. But the effectiveness of this campaign was so overwhelming that it had to. It just had to. I mean, when you looked at everything else.
So this campaign also, it didn't only just won votes from the Americans. It actually won votes from the whole world. Because like in China, I know the previous elections and all that, the people were interested, but they're kind of, okay, it's America's business and they can elect their own president. But this year I realized that people in China actually got involved. They actually were interested. They actually wanted Obama to win. And I think this campaign is very interesting because of the medium that they used. I mean, to get in China, the best way is actually through the internet, because yes, there are a lot of restrictions there, but people are, that's the only way, people in China can connect with the rest of the world. And the way they use the internet, I think, is very, very interesting with music, videos, and speeches, and I think that has really reached out to the rest of the world. And I think that's the goodness of this campaign. It just didn't get votes from America, but votes from all around the world.
But I think it's really worth saying that, I said it before, but this wasn't about voting for the man. We tried to separate, he's a compelling, inspiring person, but this wasn't about voting for him. I said if you look at what they did in a Harvard case study about implementation, just the thinking in that, the restraints and how they embrace different things, it was, flawless. And that's what we were rewarding. We weren't rewarding the fact that the world wanted a new, it didn't enter into a political conversation. This was actually.
Hello. I think the word co-owned is a really important word because everybody does have ownership to this thing. And wow, that's really, I'd love to do that in all my advertising actually, but I guess that'll be my next life.
Yeah.
I bet with another Brazilian journalist that the best job in the world should be the Grand Prix of Integrated. And could you comment the fact of one campaign that had pre-Grand Prix in Cannes Lions didn't have any Lion in Integrated?
Well, I think they're very different categories. The radio winner isn't in it as well. I think there's no one's taken away from that best job. I think it's a fantastic campaign. I wish I'd done it. I think it was a very worthy winner of direct PR, promo, whatever it was. I think it was fantastic, and you know what I mean. But I think when it got to this, it was, for integrated, when we looked at all the components, I think, I can't speak for all the judges, but I saw how everybody voted. It didn't feel like it was the most integrated campaign.
As I said earlier,
I don't know whether that's a reflection of the video that they submitted it with or whatever, but it's a great idea.
it didn't feel the best integrated campaign to us collectively. We felt other entries scored better. And if winning in other categories doesn't mean that the best outdoor campaign should win best integrated too. They are two different categories. The parameters are different, the criteria are different. And here, vis-a-vis other entries, we felt they scored higher. It's all comparative. It's all relative.
I just wanted to know, had Obama lost the election, would you still have awarded his campaign?
I think the point is...
He would not have lost. He would not have lost. That's the power of that. He would not have lost.
I think as well, just keep... Yeah,
Not just the campaign, the other factors that play.
There clearly other factors, but I think the same campaign in someone else's hands wouldn't necessarily have been as successful campaign. It was not only the organising thought was fantastic, the execution of that organising thought was incredible, and the way it was deployed, and the rigour, and the team, in the biggest sense, put it together. They really brought this one home from a campaign point of view, and I think so. Even if you hadn't won, it would still have been an incredible piece of communication. Absolutely. But would it have been entered? Probably not, I guess.
We would have had Sarah Palin and we wouldn't even be here.
Tony Kunderman from South Africa. There seems a little bit of clarity might be in order in explaining what qualifies for titanium and what qualifies for an integrated. Are we to believe that the Obama campaign was a great idea but not terribly well integrated, for example? And is a titanium line superior to a gold line? And should these categories be separated from each other?
Well, they are separated from each other. A lot of our time is spent actually talking about which of these categories to judge them in. And a lot of people enter them not being specific about whether they were entering in a titanium or they were entering in integrated, but they, we spent a lot of time talking about that. But I said, clearly for us, titanium was, what's that idea that is going to stretch our creative canvas a little bit wider for next year, so that makes us as an industry think that we can actually do more and have more influence and have bigger ideas. And integrated, really, we looked at everything in the context of, what is an idea that is made better by all the different mediums, whether it be 2 mediums or 3 mediums or 10, made better, not just because some client wants them to put it in multiple mediums, but the messaging was made better, the idea was bigger by all the multiple touch points. And I think, to win any medal is unbelievable. And I'm not to say that winning a gold is in integrated is more valuable than a titanium. I think they're doing different things. I think they're both incredibly valuable. And I think it was it's always open for debate. But as I said, the Obama one is the only one that we felt sort of straddled both.
Was it unanimous for Obama for titanium in both categories?
Yes, it was actually. It really was, yeah.
It can be the titanium. It was the important point there, and for us, it was. So integrated also can be the titanium.
In 3 years, I think the agency has.
Well, I can't vote for my stuff, so let me just establish that up front. I had to leave the room when we were having discussed. So.
He paid us under the table, let's be honest.
And the other is, in the other hand, since that panel was created, the Latin America have had so little prizes. And this question is for Juan Carlos Ortiz. What is missing for the Latin America advertising to get more titanium and integrated lines?
I think there was a lot of, having seen a lot of the entries, I think there's still a little bit, of confusion when people enter these. There was, people made 5-minute videos for things that were just, shouldn't be entered, do you know what I mean? And I think I can't say that there's no secret to what will win. I think that's what makes it the most exciting category, because we're all, even as judges, we go into it thinking, this is going to be amazing, I don't know what I'm going to see. You know, as I said, as long as you just know that we want to come out of the judging process inspired and thinking our industry is getting better and better. But I can't speak to why different countries aren't.
It never came up what country that was from. It never came up. It wasn't ever a discussion. It was about looking at the work. So it wasn't a nationalistic kind of thing.
Yeah, and obviously if there was any questions we had, if there was an entry that had any cultural nuances that we didn't understand, we would stop and we would ask. If anyone in the room had any more knowledge on the campaign or the idea. We were very conscious. We didn't want to miss anything just because it was from a country that none of us were from, or in a language we didn't understand. So we were very thorough. I will say that. And we actually we watched all the videos. We didn't just sort of rush through them. And it's easy to just jump through them. We watched them over and over, and we watched them multiple times. We were thorough. To the point of
that was one of our things, maybe if there's a lesson to be learned about the videos, is the more clear they are and the shorter they are, and explain the idea better. It's a really good thing, I think, for all of us to learn. It gave me a chance to kind of compare how we put our videos together at Wieden+Kennedy. So I like being able to see, wow, that's such a crucial part of getting judges to understand the idea. And I don't know what the maximum time is. If I were going to make something up, I might say 2 minutes, but I don't know if you guys would agree. But it is something for everyone to keep in mind, putting a great film together so there's understanding.
Yeah, in fact, all the Indian entries, I feel the videos were very, very averagely put together. And I probably would talk to my people there also in India, because our entries were not that well put together as you see this world is doing, and I think there's a lot to learn from it, as she said.
But a great idea is a great idea. Do you know what I mean? And even some videos that weren't that good. A great idea is a great idea, and it's one of those ones that as a jury member you were like, it's just inspiring, unbelievable, genius. Wish we'd done that. Glad as an industry we've done that. that makes it, for our clients, for internally, that's something that moves us forward. And I think the best winners did that.
So let me answer your Latin question.
He hadn't answered it yet.
Thank you, Rich. So, I think that is a very good question. And as you know, I've been living USA, Latin America as part of my life. And for me, it's been very interesting being here. First, because as you know, Latin America is a place of ideas, passion for ideas. And we as a continent, we've been doing such a good work, and in this festival always. And I think that we've been very peace-driven. So we are really doing pieces as Latin America. The best film, the best print ads, the best radios, the best cybers. But I have to tell you that it's very important, and my message for Latin America is, of course that we're going to get here, but we got to this movie late. But we're going to be in first row, of course. But right now, we need to start thinking more in convergency and less in pieces to getting here. And that's going to be our challenge. And it's a beautiful challenge. So we are late in the movie, but that doesn't mean that we're going to get in the first row. We want to do it. But this is a very interesting thing to think about, that we need more convergency and less just pieces. So that's my big message. The second one is, of course, after having this convergency mindset, because it's a mindset that we need to start shipping, our entries are not good enough. The way we are entering the work, because to participate in Titanium and in Integrated, you need to have a great idea first, of course, a great case, but also you need to make from your video another case. If you don't make a case of the case, your idea cannot be leveraged in the way you need to do it. So the message is optimistic, with a big and huge opportunity for Latin America to start working and getting in this perspective. So,
I mean, there's been a lot of focus on the videos, obviously, there, but I think it's important to recognise that, especially from the integrated perspective, and maybe looking at the list, it's so critical that every single element has to be executed to that highest level. And often there were campaigns that were discussed that had one or two elements that were just fantastic, but it's because some of the other elements maybe just weren't as impressive or just let it down, that they kind of exclude it from the being awarded with an integrated. And that's so that's an important consideration.
So,
even when we didn't get the full story from the video, we're familiar enough with the work in many cases to come to the right conclusions, I guess.
There's a certain arc to this judging. It's very interesting. I think these guys are, and one woman is a great group. But you'd watch, it would start, and you'd see a commercial, and you'd go, oh, that's funny, that's fantastic, and you'd watch it, and it's like, yes, 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 and then a piece would come in that had nothing to do, didn't come up to the level of the TV, and you go, and it brought it down. It's a very hard category to judge. It has to be all good. And it's a unique category. It's not as clean as the other categories.
Okay, here. Yeah, thank you. Just two questions. The first one, did you think that these are two questions for David? Is the key factor for the Obama campaign winning the movement it produced? And if it's it, this movement came from, what part came from the campaign, and what part came obviously for the enormous desire of change in the U.S.?
Well, separating the desire for change in the US, as I said, it was the thinking that sort of, I can imagine, how the campaign was orchestrated. The thinking about how they wanted to, bring this candidate to America, how they wanted to connect with people, how they wanted to, connect with, create the largest fundraising campaign in history of politics. Just the way they announced the vice president candidate on Twitter. They were just so progressive and smart, the way they actually orchestrated the whole campaign. And as other judges said, But they didn't just do it just their way. They set the framework for it, and they let other people contribute to that as well. So they were as much creators as they were curators, which I think was genius. You know what I mean? They allowed people to contribute to it as well and be part of that. So the movement that's the byproduct of that. I think it was fantastic. That was the intent, obviously, but it's the way they did it. You know, as I said, so it wasn't. We're not awarding America's will for change. You know, there's will for change all over the world, right? We're awarding the way they did it, the thinking, and how they did that. And it would have taken a lot of, I'm sure on their end that, it probably defied the conventions of how you run a political campaign. And I think that took a lot of it, that was inspiring the way they did it. Because it was a risky strategy, I'm sure, when they started to roll this out. So we were rewarding the thinking.
Thank you.
3 years before, but Barack Obama's story, his ideas, and his message of hope and change carried the promise of winning over a nation hungry for both. Obama was a presidential candidate like no other. Winning the White House would take a campaign like no other. One built from the ground up by Obama for America to purposefully foster unprecedented inclusivity, giving people the power to participate like never before. Americans came together under the brand that came to symbolize change, unity, and better days ahead. A promise that came to life on myBarackObama.com. The campaign made unprecedented use of text messages, email, Twitter, MySpace, Facebook, and YouTube to involve supporters. But in the end, it wasn't just about building websites, creating events, or making ads. It was about making history, restoring hope to the people, bringing change to America.
That's obviously the condensed version of the video we judged, but it's just the top line. To directly work for the party. So most agencies won't touch it. In the past, Saatchi and Saatchi London was built on, getting Margaret Thatcher as party. They actually built their empire on that. So, if you're confident, you can do inspiring stuff, and you can get change the world. Why not?
Is the movement the real winner about this campaign? The movement above the campaign?
Well, the idea creates the movement. There always has to be something that creates the movement. Certainly there was a will for change, but that will could have just dissipated and disappeared. And I think what they did is the thinking and how they brought this campaign, who was obviously an underdog on levels because he was smart, I think that the way they played the campaign was chicken, and they really connected people, and they handed over the reins to people, and everyone felt they contributed to the campaign. It was more than just people voting.